let's step back and talk about drumroll, Liberation Day. God. So this will go down in history. I'm just going to make the statement now, and those of you who are still around in 5-10 years, you will call up the show and tell me how right I was again. This is going to be called one of the dumbest, stupidest, economic acts of any American president, really in American history. It's dumb and stupid because, I won't say it's the worst overall because, FDR did worse things, but for everything that FDR did and anything that Johnson did and even everything that Nixon did and everything that these presidents did that was really, really bad from an economic policy perspective, it all had some kind of rationale, usually appeasing some interest group or significant interest group, but usually helping some people. But here, there's no upside. There's no upside. It's an economic disaster. It'll bring no benefits. You'll be able to take no credit for anything that happens. Nothing good is actually going to happen. It's going to set back the U.S. economy significantly. Whether we go into a recession or not, this is going to dramatically hurt economic growth. It's going to set us backwards. It's going to actually hurt wages. It's going to hurt productivity. There's just nothing good here. Nothing. And no particular special interest groups, except maybe steel manufacturers, are going to be happy about this. It's not like, I don't know, Medicare or Social Security. You do that, at least, elderly people are supportive of you. But here there's no large electoral vote in the long run that's going to be happy with you. Now, it's true, MAGA, it doesn't care. MAGA, Make America Great Again movement, they will vote for Trump. They will love Trump. They will support Trump. They think Trump is amazing. They love tariffs for reasons we'll talk about in a few minutes. But from an economic perspective, there's nothing. And MAGA will lose from an economic perspective. I think MAGA will lose. The people who support Trump, the real supporters, the passionate supporters, are the people who are going to lose the most here. This is going to be destructive to the working class. So, somebody called it, I think economist Tyler Cowen called it, this is an own goal, one of the worst own goals that any president has ever done from an economic perspective. And I think he's absolutely right. It's unnecessary, stupid, isn't addressing any particular real need that people have out there that politically you need to satisfy. And of course, from an economic perspective, it's just a disaster. It's just nothing good about it. There's very few things, the government can do that are this bad. And so the market was down, 10+% over the 2 days. The day he made the announcement, which was on Thursday, he made the announcement at 4 p.m. just after the market closed. The market was up a little bit that day because the expectation was, okay, he's done all the bluster, he's made all these statements, he's gone out there and expressed himself, and now everybody, over the last 24 hours, probably everybody's moderated him. He's got together with his advisors, and they've changed the plan. They've made it more moderate. The tariffs, they can't be as bad as he presented them. It's so economically illiterate. It's so economically stupid. No, Trump won't do it. The people around him, they'll stop him. They'll stop Trump. And then he came on at 4 o'clock and basically presented a plan that was much worse than the worst version that anybody expected. Again, we'll talk about it. These tariffs are not reciprocal. There's nothing reciprocal about it. They don't have anything to do with the country, the reciprocal country's tariffs. And they only have to do with the trade deficit. And so the market, as a consequence, said, oh my God, this is much, much worse than we expected. And, the next couple of days, the market plummeted. Actually, no. So he made the announcement on Wednesday. Market plummeted on Thursday. And then Friday early morning, just before the market opened, or maybe just before the market opened, China announced that it was reciprocating with 34% tariffs on all American goods. And that caused the market to plunge again. So the market is now plunged over 2 days. It's some of the worst, financial performance we've seen, certainly since COVID, since March of 2020. It is, yeah. Well, you know what I think. I mean, it's just the dumbest, stupidest thing ever done. And this is not controversial. So usually what I say, even about economics, is controversial. My statement about tariffs, there's nothing controversial here. This is pretty much, if you're online, you'll find Larry Summers, who's generally a left of center, was he, Treasury Secretary under Obama or Clinton, or he's a leftist, left of center. Larry Summers thinks this is the dumbest policy ever. Tyler Cowen, kind of a almost libertarian-ish economist, and everybody in between pretty much agrees. Who is educated in economics agrees. This is probably the dumbest economic policy that anybody has ever done, any American president has ever done, and completely unnecessary and just stupid. So there's a lot of information out there. If you go on Twitter, or if you go read the Free Press, if you go, Tyler Cowen has a good article there. Matt Iglesias, left of center, and Cato Institute. I mean, there's so much material out there right now against these tariffs. I'm not going to give you a lot of information here that you can't already get out there by, again, economists of all political shades. This is not about left and right. This is about ignorant and knowledgeable, stupid and smart, care about America, not care about America. All right, so we will. We're gonna talk about this. We're going to talk about the tariffs and how we came up with them, where the numbers come from, and how the imposition of tariffs on various countries and what kind of impact that has. I want to talk about the geopolitics of this. There's a huge geopolitical consequence of this. This is going to have all the opposite effects of what I think Trump would like, or I don't know what Trump would like. Who knows? But this is going to have very detrimental geopolitical impacts on the United States. Again, it might have ultimately positive impacts on the rest of the world if they act in a rational way. Unlikely that the rest of the world acts rationally, but if they did, it could have positive impacts on it because it could wake them up. It has only negative implications for the United States. And my fear, here's another one of my predictions, my real fear, and this is not just me exaggerating or anything like that, but my real fear is that ultimately this day, Liberation Day, will come to be known as a pivot day, as a day in which America, pivoted towards economic decline. Now, you could probably set that date during the financial crisis, maybe even 9/11, lots of dates. But this could be the one key decision that kind of clearly illustrates, okay, now America's in decline. And again, unforced error, unnecessary, completely unnecessary, self-inflicted. So geopolitical consequences, we'll get to that. We're going to talk about economics, geopolitics. Oh, yeah, I want to talk about some of the things that people are saying to justify this. And my comments on it. Again, nothing new here. These are the same excuses and reasons people have been giving forever. But what's his name? Miller, one of Trump's major advisors, xenophobic, immigration hating, import hating, Trump advisor is out there spouting, Stephen Miller, spouting just unbelievable, insane nonsense. Now, here's the thing I want you to remember, and we've talked about this before as well. Trump and the people close to Trump are professional liars. That is, they lie. They know they lie. They are constantly lying. They lie so much that it's almost impossible to differentiate between when they lie and when they tell the truth. And while most politicians lie, when most politicians lie, they try to hide the fact that they're lying. They still believe that there is a truth out there, and they don't. There's some way they don't want to be caught. The whole point of Trump's lies is he doesn't care about being caught. The lies are a loyalty test. The lies are a form of trying to, change what people are talking about, change the whole framing of an issue, and therefore get people aligned, with the lie. And they've learned it somewhat from the left, that if you lie and lie and lie and lie and lie on the same thing over and over again for a long period of time, people start believing it. And at some point, the lie becomes, well, it's an obvious truth. And nobody even challenges, nobody even thinks of it. And there are a number of economic lies that have been told about the U.S. economy over the last 20 years that, the lie is coming home to roost now, in a sense that Trump is capitalizing on those lies, the decline of the middle class and the decline of wages and the decline of the standard of living and quality of life in America, all lies that particularly the left and MAGA have perpetuated. Now we've got economic policy based on those lies, and we're all going to suffer the consequences of that fact. All right, let me just do something here. Sorry. All right. All right. So we'll talk about Stephen Miller and the kind of lies. We'll talk about that is related to the lies. All right. The other thing I want to make clear is there's no economic strategy here. There's no big plan. There's no remaking of the world trading system by some thoughtful, if a mistaken plan. No. This whole thing, everything that happened on Wednesday, this whole thing is just Trump. It's one plan. It's one person emoting, acting like a child, imposing his will on his economic advisors. Let's be clear. There's not an economist, with exception of maybe one person. There's not an economist in the White House who believes this tariff plan is a good plan. There's not one person in the entire White House who believes this tariff plan is a good plan. It doesn't matter. It has nothing to do with good or bad. It has everything to do with satisfying the president's desires. You heard that from J.D. Vance the other day about Greenland, right? Why do we want Greenland? Well, because Trump wants Greenland, and we must support everything the president desires. Well, this is the same thing. Trump hates trade imbalances, hates trade deficits, and therefore it's the job of the economists to satisfy the president's desires. Even if that destroys the U.S. economy, it doesn't matter. The president desires that, and therefore we must do it. Here's just one concrete example of this. Trump's team has spent weeks, really since he was elected, months, trying to calculate a true, there's no such thing as true, but true, in this context, there's no such thing as true, reciprocal tariff rate for every country. They got the data out, they looked it up, they studied it, they tried to calculate an actual rate. And they were all ready to present this and to have this go into effect. And again, they work hard on this. It's not easy, and they took into account different tax regimes, and I mean it's all nonsense, it's all BS, but they did the work, they did the math. But the reality is that a few days before Liberation Day, Donald Trump personally selected a formula that was basically based on two variables: the trade deficit with each country and the total value of its U.S. exports, and he divided the two numbers, and that was it. And that's how they calculated all the so-called reciprocal rates. Has nothing to do with the tariffs the other country imposes on the U.S. I'll give you one example. Israel, in the days leading up to the imposition of tariffs, let's back up a little bit. Israel has very, very, very low tariffs with America. Most things, 80% of all imports into Israel from the U.S. are taxed at zero. There was some agricultural products, food basically, that was taxed at a low rate, but there was a tariff on it. So Israel unilaterally said, we're eliminating all tariffs on U.S. goods. We're lowering tariffs to zero, even on the food. And by the way, Israeli farmers are very, very upset because, as you know, tariffs are nothing but a tax to protect special interest groups. And one of the most powerful special interest groups, one of the most powerful pressure groups in Israeli politics, are the farmers. And so the Israel unilaterally lowered tariffs to zero in spite of the objections of the farming lobby. What did Trump do? Did he say, oh, Israel has zero tariffs with the United States, we should have zero tariffs with Israel? Now, there is no such thing as zero tariffs because there's a minimum of 10% tariff on everybody. But even that wasn't enough. It wasn't just the 10%. Because Israel exports to America more than it imports. In other words, the United States has a trade deficit with Israel. It doesn't matter that the tariffs were zero. And Israel got hit with I think a 13% or above 10% tariff rate. Not huge, but 13% is significant on all Israeli goods, which means you'll be paying more for much of your technology because that's the biggest thing that Israel exports to the United States. It's technology. So it has nothing to do, I had one other example, it has nothing to do with the tariff rates that the other country imposes on you, actually, and everything to do, I had this Switzerland example, and I can't find it now. So Switzerland, here's a good example. Switzerland has no tariffs on American goods. So you think if it was reciprocal, Trump would have no tariffs on them. But instead, the tariff on Switzerland is going to be 31%. 31! Why? Again, because they run a trade deficit. Right? The Swiss were shocked. Right? I mean, even Europe, which does have tariffs on American goods, like the EU. Switzerland is not part of the EU. The EU, which does have tariffs on American goods, but has, I guess, a smaller trade deficit and more exports come in from the United States. They only got a 20% tariff. Britain, because it doesn't have a trade deficit with the United States, got a 10% tariff, even though they have tariffs on American goods. So the Swiss get screwed for not having tariffs. So much for what Trump really wants is zero tariffs in the world. No, he doesn't. He wants zero trade deficit for the United States, which is economically ignorant. We've talked about this many times. So expect your Swiss chocolate. I'm going to actually fill my suitcase before I come back to Puerto Rico with Swiss chocolate, the Lindt chocolate, which I like, because it's just gone up in price by 30% in the United States. Medical devices, which we buy from Switzerland, that are imported by the United States into Switzerland, they're going to have a very high import rate. I don't know. It's just ridiculous. And of course, by doing this, we're favoring English chocolate. We're favoring British medical devices over Swiss chocolate and Swiss medical devices, even though arguably Swiss chocolate is better. It's going to be so much more expensive than British chocolate that we might have to compromise for British chocolate because we won't be able to afford Swiss chocolate. But we're benefiting British chocolate not because consumers prefer British chocolate, but because Trump, in his bizarreness, weirdness, stupidity, is putting a lower tariff on British chocolate than he is on Swiss chocolate by a factor of 1 to 3. Tariff on Swiss chocolate is going to be 3 times as high as the one on British chocolate. Who gets screwed by that? Well, you do. Prices might not go up that much, but choice will go away. Choice will go away. I mean, it could very well be that we just don't import chocolate from Switzerland anymore because it's too expensive. The importers won't import it because they'll think nobody will buy it, and we'll just switch to British chocolate. Now, there's a dramatic decline in quality. Have you ever tasted British chocolate? I'm kidding. British chocolate is probably quite good. No, it really isn't. It really probably isn't. All right. So, as I said, the tariffs were not calculated based on reciprocity. So first thing you can do to other people out there saying, it's just reciprocal, they tariff us, so we're tariffing them. No, Switzerland doesn't tariff us, and we are tariffing them. So no, it's nothing like that. This is what you have to remember, and this is the most important thing you have to remember. The increase in tariffs is a tax increase on Americans. Americans will pay it with higher prices and less choice. Higher prices and less choice. And the Americans will start paying it almost immediately. This will hit the economy very fast. It's phasing in this week or this coming week. There will be a variety of different reciprocal tariffs placed on American goods, which will hurt American exports and raise prices all over the world for American goods, but also for domestic goods. As we know, if you raise price for an import, the domestic competitors are free now to raise their prices because they face less competition. We've seen this already with steel. Steel has a 25% tariff. Steel prices in the United States have gone up, I think, more than 25%, because domestic manufacturers say, okay, now we can raise prices because our competition's prices automatically have gone up by 25%. And that means that everybody who uses steel is going to pay much higher prices for steel. And that means that everything that you buy that has steel in it is going to cost a lot more money. For what exactly? Okay. So here's the story the Trump people are telling. Basically, there are few historical facts that they, lump up together and make the case about. They say, look, we inherited a depression. I'm not kidding you guys, but Stephen Miller is out there saying that the Trump administration inherited an economic depression from Biden. Now, what did I say before about lies? He knows it's a lie. It doesn't matter. He says it confidently. He looks straight into the camera and he tells you, we inherited a massive economic depression. And people are going, yeah, I didn't like the Biden economy. Yeah, it must have been a depression. He says that the economy was in total freefall when Trump took office. Total freefall. Now, just by the way, actual GDP growth was at 2.3%, not outstanding, but certainly not freefall. Unemployment rate was 4.1%, which is pretty close to full employment in the United States. The inflation rate, while not good, was at 2.9%, not 7 or 8%. It was probably the healthiest economy in the Western world, maybe the healthiest economy in the developed world, because even in Asia, most of the Asian economies, the rich Asian economies, are struggling. He goes on to say, over the last few decades, the middle class has been hollowed out. Now, it's true, the middle class has shrunk. But I've told you this before, and the data is just the data. You can argue with me about ideas, but data is data. The middle class has shrunk because more middle class people have become rich. The number of people in poverty in the United States has gone down. The number of people in the middle class have gone down. And the number of people who are defined by whoever defines these things as rich has gone up. But you see, if you're in the lower middle class and if you're in the upper realms of the poverty, you don't know that and you don't really care about that. You feel stuck. And that's who he's appealing to. But if you're in the upper middle class, if you're in one of those middle class who've now become rich, you should know better. You might think it's just you. I'm doing well, but everybody else is doing terrible. That's also something common that people often articulate. They argue that wages have not gone up. That's just not true. Over the last 15 years, wages have gone up really well. And actually, working class wages have gone up faster than wages of higher income people. So wages have done very well. Unemployment has been very low. GDP growth has been, not great, but it's been increasing. And inflation, while spiking in 2022, has been declining and has stabilized at, again, around 2.9%, which is too high, but not an unmitigated disaster that's being presented. So the first thing these people do, and this is, by the way, a typical fascist tactic, but it's also what the left does. Politicians do this. They present the past in the darkest terms possible, so as to justify you have to do something radical. We have to do something radical. And by the way, if the tariffs lead the economy down, if they make it worse, if we head into a recession, which everybody's expecting, including the administration now, they will blame it on Biden. They will say, and they're saying it now, they're saying it's a necessary cleansing. We need it. We need a recession to cleanse the economy of the muck, and we'll come out of it on the other side much, much stronger. But this is voodoo economics. This is complete nonsense. So, first of all, they have to lie about the state of the economy to justify radical stuff. The second thing people like Stephen Miller say, and I saw a video of him saying this, we provide defense for the Koreans. We provide defense for the Japanese. We provide defense for Europe. He doesn't say this, but implicit in everything is we provide defense for Israel. And so we subsidize the defense of the West. And we've had it. We're not subsidizing it anymore. Now, there's a lot of truth to that. We do subsidize the defense of the Western world, the free world, if you will. The United States spends a lot more on defense spending than than Europe does. It spends more than Japan and South Korea, and it deploys troops all over the world in order to defend the free world. And it's completely understandable to say, we've had enough of that. We don't want to do it. Okay, so stop doing it. Stop providing that defense. But instead, what he's saying is, we've been subsidizing it all. We want our money back. So we're going to tariff you. And that's how we're going to get our money back. Because now you, all these other countries, you're going to have to pay this tariff. And that's going to compensate us for all the money we spent on defending you. But Europeans and South Koreans and Japanese and Chinese and everybody else, well, we're not defending China, but anyway, all these people, they don't pay the tariff. Do I have to say it again? You pay the tariff. Americans pay the tariff. The tariff is a tax increase, by the way, the largest tax increase in America, certainly since the 1960s, depending on how it plays out. But you pay the tariff. So we're basically saying, look, Europeans, we've been subsidizing long enough. We want to stop subsidizing NATO. So we're going to raise taxes on Americans, and we're going to stop buying as many goods from you as we did before. That doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's again logically incoherent. If the United States wants to say, we do not want to defend Europe anymore, there's a process, I'm sure, of leaving NATO. If the United States wants to say, we're not going to defend South Korea and Japan anymore, fine. You can close your bases in South Korea and Japan. Now, we can talk about the wisdom of doing that, but you can close your bases in South Korea and Japan and stop doing it. But the idea that we should tax ourselves in order to penalize the Europeans, Koreans, Japanese is insane. But you see, it doesn't matter. They'll just repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. It's just like Trump keeps saying, other people pay the tariffs, other countries pay the tariffs, even though, again, nobody actually believes that, including Trump. But he says it over and over and over again, and now people start repeating it. And of course, one of the ways Trump knows you're loyal, one of the ways Trump knows you're one of the good guys, is if you repeat his lies. It's a loyalty test. And by the way, one of the things all this lying does, I mentioned this before, one of the things all this lying does, it's an attack on reason. It's an attack on reality. It's an attack on fact. And they do this on purpose. This is what fascists, authoritarians do. What they want to do is cripple your mind. They want to make it impossible for you to think for yourself. They want to make it impossible for you to be able to differentiate between what is true and what is not. Because then you become epistemologically dependent on them. You become dependent on them for knowledge, for truth, for reality. And this is what the Nazis did, this is what the communists did. They have to divorce your mind from reality, because otherwise you'll oppose what they're doing, because you'll see how stupid it is. And they do that by lying and lying and lying and lying.